Welcome back to Captmoonbeam's Q A. On this episode, I'm going to answer a couple of questions, actually 4 of them. How do I get into corporate aviation? Can I fly a B-17? On the airlines, I was taking a trip, sitting next to the wing. We landed, it looked like the wing's opening up when we touched down. What's going on with that? And why don't I have more ATC radio communications in my own videos? Buy the ticket, take the ride, here we go. As far as the question of can I fly a B-17, never flown one. I would love to. I think that's really a cool airplane. I've gone through them at air shows and stuff like that, and I thought it was kind of an odd question, but it dawned on me that it probably actually came from Google Plus, because that's where I've got a banner with a B-17 on it, and I've got a website with some B-17 cockpits. The B-17, for people that are not familiar with it, it was a 4-engine prop bomber during the Second World War built by Boeing. It was called the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. It saw most of its action during the air war in Europe, and they built thousands of these airplanes. After the war, most of them were chopped up for scrap. The first one actually to complete 25 missions was the Memphis Belle. The Memphis Belle got that name. Its captain had this girlfriend named Margaret Polk, and they painted her on the nose of the B-17 in her swimsuit. And after it completed its 25 missions, they sent it back to the U.S. to go on tour to sell war bonds to help pay for the war effort. And after that, the city of Memphis got it, and that's where I live. The Memphis Belle then was put on the property of the National Guard Armory there at Central in Memphis. And it's set on a really large concrete pedestal. It was out in the open, out in the weather for years. And as a kid, I got to go actually up into it and walk through it. And it was pretty weathered, and it had been vandalized and stuff like that, but it was pretty cool. And I always remember passing that airplane. Years later, I mean, it was still out there. So finally, it was restored and put out on Mud Island, but it was still in an open air area. And it was eventually turned back over to the U.S. government, the Air Force, and it went to Dayton, Ohio, to be restored. Eventually, it will either end up at the Air Force Museum or the Smithsonian. It's considered one of the 5 most historic U.S. aircraft, and it definitely has its place in history. I got one question on how to get into corporate aviation, and this person was working on their private pilot's license and intended to be a professional pilot. And I sent back a little text saying, well, you need to get your instrument, your multi-engine rating, your commercial, your CFI, build time. But if you want to do that, one of the things you really need to work on, even while you're doing that, is the fact that corporate aviation, most of these corporate flight departments are actually very small. They have 1 airplane, 1 pilot, 2, and when something comes open, it's not like they put it into the local newspaper classifieds. The first people they look at are people that have helped them out part-time. After that, they'll be looking at people, maybe that have a typewriter in that aircraft or at the local airport. And if they run out of options, then it'll go to the Human Resources Department to be put in an ad somewhere or something like that. So the thing to do really, and this is so important, is develop relationships with people at the airport where you're at. And that's how a lot of times people find out, because the first people to find out about that job have a huge advantage. And they're at the airport, there are only so many people out there. A lot of times, they'll tell their friend, oh, this guy needs this, and he'll show up. So definitely try to build those relationships early, get to know people, go out there, have lunch. I'm not saying bug them every day, but every now and again, check back, ask if it's okay to check back with you, take you out to lunch, see what's going on. Or if you can get a job helping them in the office doing paperwork or something like that. That's maintaining that relationship, which is going to be so beneficial to you when you finally get all your ratings and get the time that's required. And another option for trying to get on with the corporate flight department is to get a job with a Part 135 charter company. A lot of those guys that work for the charter companies eventually go on to work for corporate flight departments. And one of the reasons is before a company buys an airplane, they've probably already been chartering, may have been chartering for years. The guys that are flying them that they already know and feel comfortable with, feel safe with, those are going to be the guys that they go to and say, hey, we're thinking about an airplane. Would you be interested in flying it for us? That happens a lot. Now, if you're not a pilot, you've probably noticed this before, though, if you fly on the airlines and sitting in the window seat, you're coming into land and you touch down, and all of a sudden it looks like the wing is opening up. All these panels open up on the wing. The question was, well, what's going on with that? What's going on there is those are actually spoilers. Either automatically or manually, the crew will either set or manually deploy those as the aircraft touches down. Once there's weight on wheel, the switches will close that allow those to pop up, and they hydraulically extend and they spoil the lift along the wing. When the lift is spoiled, the aircraft sets more firmly on the ground and it allows for much better braking. The aircraft can stop quicker then, and also it prevents the aircraft from becoming airborne inadvertently. Because if you touch down at 120 miles an hour, there is still a substantial amount of lift being created on that wing. So it's important to put the aircraft firmly on the ground so that you can initiate braking. The reason I don't have more ATC audio transmissions in my videos is because I'm normally using an iPhone 4S, and cockpits are noisy. I can't always get the audio. Sometimes it's just an inappropriate time for me to have the overhead speakers turned on and turned towards high. Other times there may be something else going on. So I end up with a number of videos that have ATC communications in them, and I put them up. But then I also end up with these other videos, and I think, well, somebody's probably going to want to see this video for one reason or another. Maybe we're going into their home airport, and that's what they find interesting. Or maybe this type of aircraft is what they find interesting, or there's something else interesting about it. So I put those up also. I'm very well aware that the ones that have the radio communications in them are really much more interesting, and that's what I try to get. Unfortunately, it's not always possible. And I'm going to try to work something out where maybe I could get more of that done. Maybe a connector or an adapter or something like that for the iPhone. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. If you like the video, give me a like. Appreciate comments also. Till next time, fly safe.